And I got to thank Theron and John Park and all the folks working on that Pine Island Cranberry project. That is a very cool deal. That's the fun part of this work, and reminds us of why we all got in this profession in the first place, to have the chance to be part of something like that. Now you get to hear about the side of the wildlife profession that isn't quite so glamorous, but that's my fate in life, is to be the non-glamorous part of the wildlife conservation world. I want to give you an update on the status of the National Bobwhite Conservation Initiative and our work with the National Bobwhite Technical Committee and the states, and then move on in the second half of my spiel here to cover a topic that is quite controversial, but is becoming increasingly important to the future of game bird conservation. But I want to start first with just the business and an update on the NBCI. In March of this year, the NBCI Management Board approved a budget for the first time ever for the NBCI of just over $900,000 a year average for the next 3 years. That is a place that we have never been before and gives us capability that the NBCI has never had. And we're in this position because the 25 states that make up the NBCI are stepping up and anteing up real money to increase the capability of the NBCI to provide national and regional level services that are intended to make the state's jobs easier and better and more effective at restoring bobwhites in your own states. That budget and the funding from the states has allowed NBCI to finally become fully staffed for the first time. And the last 6 months of my time this year have been spent in large part hiring people for the positions that are crucial to what we need to get done. And just very quickly, almost everybody I'm going to show here is in this room, and I urge y'all to look them up and introduce yourselves and start getting to know the NBCI staff. Tom Franklin is the agricultural liaison for the NBCI. He is staffed to the Ag Policy Subcommittee of this organization. He started working for us in January. He is maybe arguably the most seasoned wildlife professional in the country at working national conservation policy in Washington. He's now working for us half-time, and I can't hardly get a break from all the ideas and opportunities that he keeps sending me and wanting to capitalize on in Washington. And they're all things that are good and that we've been wanting to do for many years. Tom Franklin's over here in the green shirt, so please introduce yourself. Jeff Hodges started working for NBCI in February to fill the 5-year vacant grassland coordinator position. So he's now working as staff for the Grassland Grazing Lands Subcommittee that's chaired by Nick Prowl. Jeff has an entire career working with native grassland restoration and management, and is finally going to start digging into issues that we've been talking about for a long time. And I don't see Jeff in the room here, but there he is right behind Tom. We've also finally filled our long-needed data analyst and data manager position with Derek Evans, who started working for us in April. Derek is based at the University of Tennessee and stationed in the office with the Information Technology Services Department at the University of Tennessee. So our guy is working in their office so that they can work together and synergize between UT's technical people and Derek working for the NBCI. Derek is not here. He and his wife are expecting their first child any day now, so he figured that might be a little higher priority than coming to the meeting. We wish him well and his wife. Steve Chapman started working for us just a couple months ago as our new forestry coordinator, replacing Mike, who abandoned us in the most treasonous of ways last fall to go to the Shortleaf Pine Initiative. I want everybody to give Mike a hard time for leaving us. But the good news is we found Steve, who spent his entire career or most of his career with Georgia Forestry Commission, working in local offices and in the state office, overseeing implementation of Farm Bill and private lands forestry management programs. Steve and I go way back, and I like to say that in my view, in my experience, all over the Southeast that the state that has the best relationship between the Wildlife Agency and the Forestry Commission is Georgia. And that is halfway due to Steve Chapman and all the work that he's done with Reggie and the Georgia DNR for a lot of years. So we're really proud to have Steve on and trying to pick up the slack that Mike left. We're also have gotten in a situation, another little business item, that when the NBCI was put at the University of Tennessee back in 2009, the NBCI was a one-man show. It was just me. And the University of Tennessee made a very aggressive and very generous proposal to the states for how they would support the NBCI. And that included providing lots of administrative support and internal assistance from the university. And UT has lived up to that pledge in very good ways. But the world has changed from 2009 to 2015 for the NBCI. And we've gone from 1 to 7 full-time positions now, which has created an extraordinarily increased burden on the system. So we now are at a point where we need to bring on some extra administrative, financial management, accounting, contracting type assistance for the NBCI. So we're in the process now of hiring 2 part-time people that NBCI will be paying part of, the Department of Forestry, Wildlife, and Fisheries at UT will be paying part of, and Mike Black is going to be paying part of as well. So these will be shared positions serving all 3 of those entities, but will be a real benefit to me and the NBCI administratively. So by autumn we'll have those 2 people on, and hopefully some of my time can be freed up from administrative things and allow me and us to focus on more of the things that we need to be focused on. So a quick summary slide is the NBCI is in the strongest shape it has been since it was created in 2002. 14 states have pledged a year ago to substantially increase their contributions to the NBCI to help us grow. I just got word last week that a 15th state has, on its own initiative, decided to step up and join those ranks of increased supporters, and that's the state of Tennessee, and we're very grateful to Tennessee for that. And all the rest of the states are continuing the support that they have been providing all along. So that 25-state package of support to the NBCI is a pretty powerful statement for bobwhite conservation and for the state's recognition and acknowledgement of the need to step up the game for bobwhites. So we're now in the process of taking on a lot of new projects, a lot of new initiatives and tasks, and we have many things going on at one time, building new relationships. And while this is going on, one of the side benefits of the states investing in NBCI is the states are paying more attention to the NBCI now. When you pay for something, you care about it more, you pay more attention, you want to be more involved. So that's working out really well, and the NBCI Management Board becoming more active, more engaged, more effective, and really growing its oversight, guidance, and advisory role for the NBCI. Just want to hit a few recent highlights of some of the biggest things we're working on right now. This first one, pivot corners, are now eligible for enrollment in the CP33 Practice of the Conservation Reserve Program. You will think I'm making this up, but I will show you the document if I have to. We asked for this, our group asked for this practice in 1996 to FSA in an official letter from the Southeast Quail Study Group. 19 years later, FSA decides to approve one of the simplest, what should have been easiest, no-brainer approvals they could have ever done for a good thing for bobwhites and grassland birds and other farmland wildlife. 19 years it took of persistent bugging and harassment to them. But it's done now finally, and it's done because of this group. Tom Franklin will argue that it was done because of him, because he started one week and the next week FSA announced the acceptance of this practice. So his job as our agricultural liaison, he's got a really nice feather in his cap right off the bat. We're also, now that Jeff Hodges is working for us, he is diving headlong into the Natives First concept that this group has conceived and developed and has been pushing for 3 or 4 years now. This is one of those very, very big deals that'll take a long time to get approved and be completed, but when it does, it stands to be a game changer for bobwhite and grass and bird conservation nationwide. When we get to the point 2 years or 5 years down the road where USDA actually establishes and embraces a native plant policy across the board for all of their programs, it will be a different world for grass and bird conservation in this country. So Jeff is embracing that, and the subcommittee of this group as probably the biggest goal they could ever strive for. We worked with Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources to put on a CIP habitat assessment training workshop in May at Shaker Village, Kentucky. That was very well attended by states all over the bobwhite range, and got very good reviews on that course from everybody who attended, which gives us positive reinforcement that kind of training function is something that NBCI needs to do more of, more frequently, of more different types. John Doty hired a film crew to come to that training session, and they filmed everything that went on, interviewed people. They brought a drone to get aerial footage of this training and the habitat assessments, and all that footage the raw footage I think is already online now, but it's going to be compiled into separate modules that anybody in any of your states can go to and learn about the different aspects and different pieces of habitat assessment for NBCI focal areas. We're also overhauling the NBCI website, a complete overhaul for the first time. That's overdue and will be done by the end of this year, and we'll make that website more usable and more capable. We have also just started a really cool project, filming a full 30-minute episode of a PBS documentary on bobwhite conservation for their series called This American Land. We've got a contract with the producers of that series. They started filming week before last in South Carolina, and we expect the filming probably will be done this year, and the episode aired on PBS sometime in 2016. So this will be ongoing, but a pretty cool thing and a pretty impressive opportunity to reach the public about the plight of bobwhite conservation across the whole range. We're also organizing our first ever congressional staff tour of bobwhite habitat management that Tom Franklin is organizing. It's scheduled for September 2nd on the eastern shore of Maryland at Chino Farms, which was mentioned earlier this morning. Depending on how that comes off, which I think it will come off very well, that is the kind of activity that I think NBCI needs to be doing a lot more of, more frequently, in more places. I've seen Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever are probably the best organizations at doing these kind of field tours for their habitat needs in support of their priorities at the national level. And they build relationships and capabilities by taking important people in Washington on the Hill out to nice locations, giving them good educational experiences, positive memories, and working relationships that last a long time. So we are way overdue at doing this kind of thing with the NBCI. We've completed a new informational brochure this year that's on the website for downloading, and a very unique opportunity came up late last year and came to fruition this year with a new partner in bobwhite conservation that I doubt any of us could have foreseen a year or two ago, and that's with the National Park Service. I know I had never viewed them as a significant partner or potential partner for bobwhites, but an opportunity came up in Arkansas at Pea Ridge National Military Park. Arkansas Game and Fish Commission was ready to establish its first NBCI focal area. The Park Service people at Pea Ridge were ready for a partnership and somebody who appreciated what they were doing. So we made a really neat thing happen at Pea Ridge in Arkansas that's undergoing now. The Park Service is excited, as we are, about that relationship and appreciates that somebody cares about the restoration work they're doing on that park for native grassland habitats. And we've now been getting inquiries from national park units in several states around the country after they learned about Pea Ridge and wanting to know if there's similar possibilities on their parks for bobwhite and grouse and bird restoration. So that's very fertile ground that came about unexpectedly, but we're going to try to take full advantage of that. So we are now, as of a couple of weeks ago, no, a month ago, we have completed our first full annual cycle of the NBCI under Pittman-Robertson funding. As everybody knows who's taken on something new, the first time you go through it is the most difficult and the most stressful and complicated. But we made it through that first year. I submitted the first annual report to all the states that have contributed PR funds. The regional offices of the Fish and Wildlife Service, federal aid coordinators seem happy. The state quail coordinators and federal aid coordinators I've heard back from seem happy with the report and the progress and the way everything's worked out. So that first year of bureaucratic challenges is behind us, and now we're looking forward to a couple of years of higher speed and more progress and less bureaucracy, hopefully. I will send out, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, the first annual report of the NBCI in this PR funding era. And I'm having to do that as a different step because the PR reports that I sent out last week are required to be narrower than everything the NBCI is involved in, because the PR report can only include PR eligible activities that we're working on. So I didn't want to just send out to all 25 states a report that's only a partial picture of what the NBCI is doing. So I created a second annual report that is PR plus a supplement of the non-PR eligible activities. This is why I need administrative help, because it took me almost a day of 3 separate trips to Staples at the town 25 miles away from my house, trying to get 150 copies made of that full annual report. And they handed me a box this tall of 150 copies. I said, I would have expected a bigger stack of paper for 150 copies of this report. And the guy said, nope, that's it. And so I show up yesterday and I give out about 20 to the steering committee and about 20 more to the coordinators meeting, and the box is empty. So I need somebody with enough competence to get copies made to help me with things like that. So that's why y'all don't have a copy, because I had planned to have copies of this report around for everybody. So I'll have to email it and y'all can print it then. So after all that overview of business stuff, I anticipate next year, year 2, to be, or actually the year we're into now, to be a pretty high energy, high speed, and highly productive year for the NBCI and the NBTC and all the states that we're working with together. The new staff that we've just hired are in a steep learning curve. With every passing month, they'll get a better feel for their jobs and a better handle on the tasks and the expectations that we have of them. And concurrently, I expect the subcommittees of the NBTC to get more and more involved, more engaged, and at higher speeds of working with the new NBCI staff. And meanwhile, more and more states are establishing official NBCI focal areas under our coordinated implementation program. So all good stuff happening. So I'm excited about the year to come.